What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another SGN video where it's all sim all the time. Today I'm bringing you guys part 2 of the Dynasty's broken. Straight up just broken right now. And the reason I'm bringing you guys this video is because the first video, wow, you guys are absolutely knocking it out of the park, man. I got almost 6,000 views in the first 24 hours, which for a channel my size is just absolutely unheard of. You guys have been giving me so much support and liking the video to help more people see it, and I really appreciate that. And that inspired me to actually put some more information together for you guys and give even further depth and analysis on how this impacts Dynasty, because there was a lot of positivity and support in the comment section of the video, but there's also a lot of people who didn't understand how this affects your Dynasty mode. And so I really think I needed to do better at putting more information out there of the cause and effect of the XP sliders essentially not working. So we're going to talk about that. But real quick, if you are new to the channel, man, thank you for checking out the video. And hey, you're here, man. Click the subscribe button. Thanks to yesterday's video, you guys' support. I went from being like 150 subscribers away from 12,000. We're like 6 subscribers away at the time of this video. So please subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. Also, like the video. Helps get me more support. And then before we get going real quick, guys, I want to make it clear. These videos are not to take a dump on EA or the devs or anything like that. That's not what this is. I'm trying to bring light to something that I'm very passionate about, that I want to get fixed and taken care of. Yes, I call it a catastrophe, and yes, I call it a shit show. There's no reason to sugarcoat the issue that's going on right here, but I'm not doing it in a malicious way. I fully support these guys. I'm trying to bring light, but I'm also trying to emphasize the importance of this. This can't be something that sits around for months until Madden and 2K is out for this to get corrected. This has to be looked at immediately. And honestly, EA, if you guys were to bring someone in-house who was extremely passionate about these modes and tested these things, because clearly this was not tested, this wasn't thought of, this wasn't looked at. The XP slider settings that you gave were not tested. That's 100% accurate. There's no way they were tested and released like this. And looking at things like that, if you brought someone in to do this for you guys, this wouldn't happen. And that's not just EA, man. 2K has the same problem, San Diego Studios. There's no company that actually brings someone in who's passionate and thinks of testing these things out. But hey, man, I'm down. Give me a job. Anyway, let's move on to it. So I have it up on the screen, but I also got sheets right here to go off. I think it's just easier. So we're going to break down exactly what's going on with the XP sliders and what happens. And so what I did is I talked about this in the first video, part 1, where I broke down all the rated players for each position in the EA default roster, and this was a great baseline for you guys to see. Now, positionally, I combined tackles, guards, defensive ends, and outside linebackers because the XP slider does that. They have an XP slider for tackles, one for guards, one for outside linebackers, and one for defensive ends. So these numbers that you see on the far left here of the image here are the left tackle and right tackle combined. So you can see in the EA roster, there are 8 combined left and right tackles who are 90 overall and 94 that are an 80 overall, right? And that's how you want to look at this on the far left where it says EA default roster. That's how you're going to understand it, is in the base roster, there's 9 quarterbacks that are 90 overall, 75 that are 80 overall. I took it a step further down below. I did a I added everything up. So in the base EA roster, we have 131 players that are rated 90 plus overall. Out of 134 teams, I think that's actually really balanced. A lot of people have complained about the ratings, but I think that's actually pretty dang good, if we're being honest. Yes, there's a lot of horrible teams in the game, but there's also a lot of really good teams in the game too to offset it. So I think that's extremely well balanced. And then the total number of 80 overalls is 1,536, which might sound like a lot, but when you have 134 teams, it breaks down. When you add up the 90 overall players and the 80 overall players, you get a total of 1,667 total players that are in the game, which breaks down that are rated 80 or above. That breaks down to 12.5 per team. You got 22 starters on the field. I think that's pretty good. Could it be a little bit lower? Yes, but is this an issue that's gonna prevent me from thinking? Absolutely not. This is perfectly fine. That's the standard that they set. That's the baseline. 12.5 80 or higher rated players per team is your average. So then I went ahead and I did a 4-year simulation, turned on automatic everything, with all the positional XP sliders at 0. Okay? And what I was able to determine, and we have this information up here for you guys to see, is that the XP slider seems to impact the amount of 90 overalls, for the most part, that are given to any position. So after a 4-year sim, the number of 90 overall quarterbacks dropped from 9 to 1. Running backs dropped from 19 to 4. Wide receivers actually went up from 11 to 15. So you can see there's definitely XP imbalance just built in naturally into the game. So they definitely need to address the balance there. You look at guards went up from 9 to 11. Defensive ends went from 15 to 25. Again, with 0 XP, we jumped up from 15 90 overall players to 25 at the defensive end position. They definitely need to adjust the balance there. But either way, this shouldn't really, for the most part, it's pretty good when you look at the 0 XP, right? The majority of positions dropped. Middle linebacker went up by 3. Outside linebackers went up by 3. Cornerbacks dropped. Safeties and everything dropped. But then you look at the number of 80 overalls. Okay, every single position increased. And I even went ahead and broke it down for you guys at the bottom here so you can see the total number of 90 overalls after a 4-year simulation with XP at 0 dropped from 131 in the base roster to 95. So that's a 27% decrease because of the XP at 0. That's even with the defensive ends doing their thing, right? However, this is where the problem lies. And we're going to talk about how this impacts things going down, because I have another sheet we're going to talk about here that's going to pop up on your screen when we get to it, but we're going to break this down first. Jumps from 1,536 80 overall players in the base roster to 2,858, which is a 86% increase with the XP sliders at 0, guys. Think about that. That's how this is coded right now. 86% increase with XP sliders at 0. When you add those two up, you get 2,953 combined players, which equals to 22 players rated between 80 to 99 per team, jumping up from 12.5 in the base roster. That is almost twice as many with 0 XP in 4 years. X kind of exploded when Bordeaux dropped his Appalachian State rebuild because he signed a 5-star recruit, and after 1 year, Kennesaw State, and after 1 year, he bumped him up to like an 83 overall. Everyone was going crazy on recruiting. It wasn't the recruiting. When this is how the XP is coded, and this is the progression that's in the game, whether he signed that 5-star recruit or not, his team was going to jump up the way it did. We all thought it was recruiting. Guys, recruiting might not even be a problem. This is a problem. So then we went ahead and expanded, and we went to the base XP that's in the game. When you start up a Dynasty, it's all set at 100 for every single player. I ran a 4-year simulation as well. This is how the numbers broke down. Quarterbacks were still taking a nerf. They dropped from 90 overalls down to 4. Running backs actually are really, really good at the XP of 100. They're very, very well balanced there. That's the one position that seems to be pretty good when you leave it at 100. Looking at wide receivers, they bumped up a little bit, 90 overall, just one more. But look at it doesn't make sense, right? So XP for wide receivers at 0. You had 15 90 overalls, 241 80 overalls. When you jump it up to 100 XP, so a 100% increase, you gain 190 overall, but you dropped 780 overalls. Make it make sense. Look at what happens when you drop down to tackles, right? We're over 315 80 overall tackles, left tackles, right tackles combined, when the base roster has 94. When you look at defensive ends at 100 XP, this is the base XP they give us, you guys. This is what it should be tuned off to begin with. We go from 132 in the base to 354. Are you guys starting to see the problem here? That is talent everywhere, exponentially more. But when you look at the numbers, here's what's really interesting here. So when you do the 100% XP bonus, which is the base default in the game for 4-year sim, your number of 90 overalls jumps from 131 in the base to 201, which is a 53% increase. 80 overalls, though, this is what's really interesting. 80 overalls go to 3,113, which is a 10% increase over the XP at 0. It's a 96% increase from the base roster, but it's only 10% more than the XP at 0. So you can see the XP sliders had a huge impact on the 90 overalls. You had a negative 27% with the XP slider at 0 and a plus 53% on 100, which is, I believe, on the dot, an 80% swing. If my math is mathin'. But only a 10% difference increase in 80 overalls between the two XP sliders as well. Either way, it combines to a total of 3,214 players rated 80 to 99 overall on XP 100 for an average of 24 players per team. We're officially double the base. Double what's in the base roster. I then took it one step further. I thought, should I do 300? No, let's go ahead and do 200 XP. I don't think we need to jump up to 300. Let's go ahead and do 200 XP. And this is where things got very interesting. Quarterbacks, the 90 overalls, we were at 12 with the base at 9. I'm okay with that sort of a fluctuation. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The 80 overalls went from 159 when we simmed 4 years on XP 100 to 151. So we gained some 90 overalls, dropped some 80 overalls. Again, guys, I'm emphasizing here that the XP sliders seem to really impact the 90 overall amount of 90 overall players, and has very little impact on the 80 overall players. It just basically seems like no matter what, players are going to jump up to 80 overall. I don't really need to break this down. You guys can see this, but I do want to emphasize where I'm getting my logic. When you look at the bottom there of the XP 200 sim for 4 years, you can see that our number of 90 overalls went from a base 131 in the base roster of 201 on the 4-year sim for XP 100 to 304 after 4 years, which is 76% increase over the base roster, or 23% more than XP on 100. So you can see a huge increase in the 90 overalls. But here's what's really interesting. 3,013 80 overalls in the XP 100 4-year sim, 3,126 on the XP 200 sim, an increase of exactly 1%. XP sliders only affect 90 overalls. This is why people are constantly trying to figure it out and messing with this and can't get it right, because the 80 overalls are massively inflated. As you can see there, it breaks down to 25.5 players rated between 80 and 99 overall in the game. Now the next question is, how does this impact your dynasty? So what if there's all these really good players? So what if we have twice as many talented players in the game after just 4 years? Let's not worry about 8, 16, 20. We can go 30, right? Let's not worry about that. Let's just focus on the 4. What happens to the game? How does that affect everything? Well, let's go ahead and next slide, please. All right, so we got our next slide up here. As you can see, this is how it affects it. So what I did is I started up a dynasty, and I went through and I counted every single team's overall in the game. But I broke it down. So I did it. I was trying to think of a way to really separate the truly elite teams, the good teams, and then the bad teams in the game, right? So I came up with this formula. You guys might not have to like it, but this is just what I did. I still think it gives good information. But 70, 79 overall rated teams were what I called bad teams. 80 85 good, 86 plus rated overall teams are teams that are competing for the 12-team playoff. That's how I looked at it. There were no teams rated 60 overall. I know there are in Play Now, but in Dynasty the ratings are different. So all these ratings are strictly Dynasty, not in Play Now. Want to establish that baseline. So in the base EA roster, we had exactly 53 teams rated between 70 and 79. 65 rated between 80 and 85, and 16 teams rated 86 or above. There was actually only 1 or 2 teams that were 90 overall. I didn't think it was worth noting the difference of 90 overall, which is why I went with 86 plus. And I actually had no idea that I was going to have 16 teams. I came up with this before I counted, and I was hoping that I'd have enough to be like, hey, this is what makes sense for teams competing for the college football playoff. So it worked out perfectly. I then loaded up my file where I simulated 4 years on XP of 0, and I counted up the teams. As you can see, 60 overall teams, we still had 0. So no teams dropped below that 70 threshold. However, you can see that the 70 to 79 overall teams dropped from 53 to 47. So that means teams got better overall in a 4-year sim of XP rated 0, which makes sense when you look at the influx of rated 80 overall players. But where did that talent go? Well, when you look at the 80 to 85 overall teams, we lost 3 of those. They dropped from 65 to 62. It went to the 86 plus team. So the rich got richer, basically, because of the prestige, and because there's so much more talent out there, all the talent is going to the top rated teams anyway. There's just that much more talent. So that's why we had such an increase in 86 overall teams. So now you're essentially, your whole top 25 is the 86 plus, right? Which we know doesn't really, that's not how it works typically. You know what I mean? Especially in a 4-year sim, we gained a huge increase. 9 new teams were 86 plus overall, and a couple teams, we actually had a lot more teams go to 90 plus overall. I didn't think it was worth noting to write that down because we were just doing the 86 plus baseline. And then we did a 4-year sim with XP on 100. I already had that file, so I just pulled that up. And here we can go ahead and look and see that, again, we had another drop in the 70-79 overall teams. We now only had 41. We did have a little bit of an increase based off of the XP0, but when you compare it to the default roster, we only gained 1 team there in the 80-85 overall range. And then we had more of the rich get richer in the 86 overall teams. So, as you guys can see, this is how it impacts your dynasty. The good teams, the top prestige teams, they all get a lot better. And then all your really crappy teams stay there. And then the fringe 79, 78 overalls, sometimes they'll bump up, but not even then. Sometimes it's really they stay where they're at. And then the 85 overall teams, 84 overall teams, they might have 4.5 prestige. They bump up. This definitely affects your guys' gameplay, you guys. We're doing rebuilds here. We're trying to be competitive. You're going from competing against 86, 16 teams rated 86 plus overall to 27 just on the base XP 100 or even 25 when it's on 0. This definitely has an impact in your dynasty, guys. So for those thinking, hey, this doesn't have an impact, this isn't going to change anything, it does. That's way too many top tier teams. We don't have that kind of top tier talent in college football. I mean, an argument could be made that on the default we don't have 16 teams that are that good. And I think that argument is 100% valid, but I didn't know how else to break it down because we only had 2 teams that are 90 plus overall, and I thought it'd be kind of weird to just be like, okay, my threshold's 80 to 87, or like, where's that line? You know what I mean? When you look at these going forward, you know, as I'm making this video, I honestly probably should have put 90 plus overall teams, so you could see that we would have an 86 to 89, and then there's like 6 to 7 90 plus overall teams in both of those sims. XP at 0, XP 100, does not matter. So for just extra information on how this impacts your dynasties, this is the information. I spent a lot of time. For those curious, I didn't feel like counting up the XP 200 because honestly I'm sick of counting. I counted 10,000 players yesterday. I counted all these teams over and over and over again, and I had to go through every single time 3 times. So my hands are tired. My hands are sore. I haven't played the game in 4 days. I've been working on this, guys. I really don't think the XP 200 matters because we know what it does to the player rating, so we're not even going to go that high. It's just going to be more of this. But either way, regardless of the simulation logic, regardless of, you know, teams beating other teams, whatever, the fact of the matter is the XP slider only impacts 90 overalls. It doesn't impact 80 overalls or anything else. And we need to have them adjust the XP slider. For every position, honestly, other than running back. At default 100, running back is perfect. For whatever reason, running back's got it right. Every other position, totally messed up. I'd like to think it's a simple tuning update, but I'm not a programmer. That's why we're just trying to bring this to their attention, guys. So just make sure we bring this to their attention. We have the data. We have the information now to tell them and show them, look, this is what's going on. This is why people are taking 71 overall Ball State, and after a year they're 80 overall, and after 2 years they're 87 overall competing for a chip. It's not what we want when we're rebuilding these dynasty teams, man. That's why they give us 30 years, not 2. So anyway, guys, hope this helps clear some things up. I really hope you guys appreciate the time and effort I spent on this video. I know it went long, but again, I wanted to cover a lot of things. But anyway, guys, appreciate you checking out this video. And yeah, stay tuned to the next one. Peace.